It's lights out today on December 20th for the RLR podcast. Another great lineup of topics for you guys today. I'm Matt, that's Nick, and before we go, I'd like to mention that we do have a special guest on the podcast today. Would he like to introduce himself real quick?
Yeah, my name is Zack. I run the Shooting Cars YouTube channel, automotive journalist, and the first time I can unironically say long time listener, first time caller. I'm excited to be on the pod. I listen to you guys actually. If you watch the Honda Odyssey review I just did, and the Honda Ridgeline, your podcast is in the video. It's up on the screen because I'm listening to it while I'm filming these cars.
Nice.
So
Sounds great.
it's brought a lot of joy to my morning. So I'm happy to be on.
Oh,
Cool.
fantastic.
Well, we're
Thank
gonna
you.
hear from. I think we're gonna run stuff with everybody. Charge here, hit Paddock Chat, and we'll start Paddock Chat today with Zach is telling us about about what you do and how that led you there real quick. But with that, you wanna hit previous week of stuff we found over the course.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to give our congratulations to Lewis Hamilton for winning the Sports Personality of the Year award from the BBC.
We're sorry to keep bringing up Hamilton on every episode, but he's just a great guy.
I swear we're gonna start Hamilton Watch. and,
Yes,
and not
congratulations. I mean,
the
I
watch
think
brand,
well deserved, right? I mean, it's not that you say what you want about him, but I think it's a well deserved award, much like the rest of them that he's gotten this year, frankly.
Yes, I do agree.
Got some
And
news about Red Bull too, right? But we're gonna hit the F1 stuff. So, got some more F1 news with Red Bull, as I think Nick and I alluded to multiple episodes. We did see that Red Bull confirmed Sergio Perez for their second driver's seat for the 2021 season. That's not unexpected, and I think obviously Alex is hurt by that. But as we alluded to before, he didn't really have the performance to show to keep the seat, at least in my opinion. But that's not to say that he's not important to Red Bull. He's actually filling in as their essentially backup and test driver. So Alex is by no means gone from Red Bull racing. He's just not so much, in the principal one of the principal seats. So
yeah,
sorry to see him go, but
and I do think he was disappointed. And the thing is, Alex does show talent, and we've talked
absolutely.
about it in the past. He does show talent in specific areas, and he's a young driver. He's still a junior driver to most people.
He's got time, and you can't ignore Sergio. I mean, come on, you can't ignore can't ignore his success over
No,
the past like 10, 15 years. He's a veteran driver. He's got the skills. He's got the knowledge. He's got the experience.
Checo
And
showed that he needed a seat this year. So
I think he'll give Max a run for his money. I'm not going to say that he'll do better than Max, but part of me is thinking that we're going to see a pretty close fight between the two Red Bull drivers this coming season.
yeah, I definitely think so.
And with that, Red Bull further, they also confirmed that because Aston Martin Racing Point is becoming Aston Martin Racing, Red Bull, as we I think previously may have mentioned on Wednesday, it will not be Red Bull Honda Racing. Red Bull will actually be going into the 2021 season without a title sponsor. For those who might not know, with F1, like when you have like Mercedes, AMG, Petronas, there are title sponsors, beyond the smaller sponsors. And for a long time, I think since 2018 at least, Aston Martin has been a title sponsor along with Red Bull Racing. So for the first time, they won't have a title sponsor going into the next season. And Honda will not be a title sponsor, and we're gonna have to see what happens because there's some interesting thoughts I think right here, Nick, about the situation Red Bull is in with title sponsors leaving and driver mix-ups, and who knows. So maybe something to hit in later episodes and dive deep on the Red Bull situation.
Yeah. Sticking on, kind of rounding out our F1 chats for this week, especially coming off of our F1 special midweek last week. Williams has a new boss, the former McLaren boss, and I'm going to butcher this name, Just Capito, or Capito.
German.
German guy.
Didn't we used to have a dentist by that name?
Very similar. That was Caputo.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
Is
continue.
that a grocery store?
That is
All-
Caputo's.
Yes.
Used to work across the street from one and was there almost every lunch break to get my ramen noodles.
There you go.
Nice.
Very nice.
Not to be confused with those two titans of industry.
So-
he's seen success at McLaren and I believe Volkswagen Motorsport. So I think I'm happy to see a new boss. This is part of the new Williams restructure. They have a new, the Williams family sold, no longer is part of the racing team and so on. They don't own the racing team anymore. So I think it's right to see some big changes at Williams over the coming seasons. And I like to see him as a bigger contender, frankly, in the field. So we'll see. I think we'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can bring as head honcho for Williams.
Yes. And sticking on the German streak, Zach, you brought up an interesting point about Volkswagen's new, maybe not new, but a very interesting part number.
If the 70s is new, then yeah, it's pretty new.
It's been since the 70s.
Yeah, no, they've done this for a long time. So I was doing thorough scholarly research on a new application product called TikTok. And I saw a video posted by a lady with a bagged Jetta. It's not even a GLI, but that doesn't matter. And so yeah, Volkswagen makes what do they call it? It's not bratwurst. It was, what is it?
It was
Hot Link, not Hot
it-
Links. That's
it
what you get at the
curry
gas
something?
station. It was currywurst.
Yeah.
So Volkswagen actually manufactures currywurst, and it actually has its own dedicated part number of 199398500. So if you go into Volkswagen parts booklets and like the actual parts catalogs, if you would be searching for literally any trim piece of a Volkswagen or lug nuts or anything, you could also find the currywurst from Volkswagen. Apparently, it's like a traditional thing, obviously over in Germany. I don't know if we can get it here in the States, but
Probably
yeah.
not, but I think to clarify, you told me, Zach, right? This isn't some subsidiary or a spin-off. Like, this is actually Volkswagen.
No, it's just it has the VW logo on the currywurst. Like,
And it has
it's
a-
not like
That's
I
insane.
recently found out that Coca-Cola owns a movie company. It's not like some secret backdoor ownership. It's just they're like, yeah, we make currywurst and slow hatchbacks. Like, what's up? Sorry, they're not slow. They're just unreliable.
You learn something new every day. I can't say that I'm surprised, but I'm also kind of surprised at the same time.
I think I need to do more research into it and just see like if that's like a traditional German thing. Maybe there's other companies that have their own currywurst. Maybe that's just like a thing. But I heard of it with Volkswagen and I thought it was very, very interesting.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, with that, Nick, I think speaking of car companies doing some interesting things, you want
We've talked about.
tell the folks at home what's going on in the land of Tesla.
We will talk about the good. We've talked about the delicious and or possibly interesting. Let's talk about the bad real quick. As Matt put in the notes, Tesla is cracking that whip. In more or less, Tesla is asking their furloughed employees to volunteer their time for free at the factory and other departments.
Hot take. That's
What?
not okay.
Yeah.
The level of disrespect, honestly, is just baffling. Like
as much as
literally,
I
they're
love Tesla,
sending
but come on.
they're sending like Amazon Prime boxes to Mars right now, but they're asking people to volunteer. Like Elon Musk is out here literally with a Starship fleet, and it was like, "Hey, could you help out in parts department? Thanks."
Yeah, it's yeah, so I was reading about it, and it's like people from marketing that have been furloughed have been asked to go over to R&D and help with like
What?
Yeah.
Hey, we know you don't have an engineering degree at all. We know you're good at Excel, but can you build the next autopilot system?
Hey, you know how to work Facebook, but can you go put this engine or this battery together?
Right. That's bad.
Yeah, it's rough, and they said it's not mandatory. They're asking them to volunteer, which I don't know why anybody would sign up if you're being furloughed from the company.
It's gotta be hilarious though, right? I mean, I think Zach, you made a comment that back there that was like they're sending like starships and all this. We talked about their first like Mars prototype starship and how it launched but blew up. Put it this way, yeah, Elon Musk is out here with starships because the next version of that starship, by the way, collapsed a day after the other one blew up. So, and I think
Elon hasn't had a good month.
I don't
And now
think
he's asking
I don't
people
think he's
to
had a
volunteer
real
work
good
for-
year based on naming conventions of children and
Yeah.
At least they're asking for volunteers. Now, is this you think it's a volunteer situation or a voluntold situation?
Um, I the article said more, or the couple of articles that I read, most of them said it's a true like we're asking them to volunteer their time to try and keep this company afloat, but it's because they're missing deadlines because of the furloughs. So we've got this chain where
it's just a vicious
people got furloughed, cars got behind, everything else is getting behind, so they're asking the furloughed people to work for free. Why on earth would you ever do that?
I mean, I believe that it's actually a volunteer basis. However, I still think that it's just ridiculous. I mean,
well,
come on.
And as long as the company doesn't show favorable preference to those who did volunteer, then, I mean, essentially, yeah, okay, if you want something to do throughout the day, go to work. But why would you go spend your time doing that for free? Unless you're getting something out of it, and it just doesn't make sense.
Put a cap on this end here. I think for those who do actually this call, hats off to you. Frankly, better person than I might I say. I mean, for those who do, great job. And commitment to the company, to a cause, and whatever is going on at Tesla. I just don't think I'd be one of them, frankly, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that covers our recharge for the week. If we're gonna move on into paddock chat,
let's hit the meat and potatoes and paddock chat here. You want to hit us here, Zach, and tell everybody just about you in general and what brought you to what you're doing now?
Sure. My quick little elevator pitch is I run the YouTube channel Shooting Cars. I've been doing it for about 5 years, but taking it really seriously for about 2. My main feature on the channel is car reviews. I've driven a lot of cars. I think the car I drove today was like 479 or something, in those last couple years. And then I also do a bunch of rotary stuff. That's actually what I started my channel with. I had a 1985 RX-7, did a Series 413B swap, Mega Squirt ECU, the whole lot. And then the rear suspension decided to... Well, it had other plans. We had creative differences, and the rear suspension decided to take a walk. And so now I'm on my first-gen RX-7, but I'm on my second first-gen RX-7, but my third RX-7 overall, because I had a second-gen in there for a little bit. But yeah, basically I am a content creator. At least that's what my bank thinks I am, so that's what I go by when I applied for a credit card. So that's what I tell people. So yeah, I'm open. I'm a big fan of the podcast and just excited to be here.
Thanks for stopping by. I think if I may say that we were talking earlier. We obviously have plugged you before, and we'll continue to do so. I think Nick and I, if hopefully people realize by now, we're not going to plug or talk about stuff that we don't have confidence or support in. And your reviews and the content, like the rotary stuff that you create, like I think we were talking before, right? It's like what you would want to tell a friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something really authentic and wholesome, and it's just when you're done watching them, you just want to. I just want to say yes. I mean, it's just great content, the way I think it should be done, and you're just fantastic. So thanks for stopping by.
Well, thank you, and that's what I came here for, so we can wrap it up. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I just wanted to come and get showered in compliments, and so I think we're done here. We can skip to checkered flag, and thank you. Like and subscribe. Thanks.
Well, before we jump into some of the meatier topics today, why don't you go ahead and we'll plug it again at the end, but how would people find you?
So YouTube, Shooting Cars. You could just youtube.com/shooting cars. You could just do the search Rotary Life, RX-7 stuff, car reviews should come up. Instagram is shooting underscore cars. And those are my main 2 platforms, just usually Instagram and YouTube. You can email me pradlreviews@gmail.com, PRADL reviews@gmail.com, blah, blah, blah. If you don't know how to spell Gmail, stop using Internet Explorer. So that's pretty much that. That's my 2 cents on that. So
I'm going to go ahead and just automatically add like comedian to your list of accomplishments.
I appreciate it. I've always wanted to write a coffee table book, but we'll see. I have a couple.
You still have time to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, like if we go off the rails, I have some stories I could share that are chuckle filled, but we have some important topics to hit.
Oh, well, okay. I guess he's in charge of the podcast today.
I am. I bought it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
100%.
He bought the podcast.
I will be purchasing the RLL podcast. Can't even pronounce the name. All right.
Heard it here first, folks.
Whatever word I said, I now own. Whatever that was.
Whatever that was. It definitely wasn't the RLR.
It definitely
podcast.
wasn't the podcast name. It was just I had a bunch of marbles in my mouth and just tried to say something.
With that, do you want to hit us off, Nick, with something you submitted for today?
Yeah. So I did want to talk about. So I was reading through the whole GM and Chevy reintroducing the Bolt as what do they call it, an EUV, an electric utility vehicle. So it's basically the Chevy Avalanche, but all electric. It's something kind of interesting coming along. We'll be able to discuss the headlights of it, because I think that was the big defining feature of it later when we talk about headlights. Spoiler alert. But the one thing that they were really touting was that it is getting GM's Super Cruise, which is their self-driving technology. Now, I don't believe Super Cruise is, from the research that we did, the Super Cruise I don't believe is available yet, but it is coming early 2021, and at least with the Cadillac lineup, it is going back to the 2018 models as a software update. So
does that mean it'll be a subscription, Zach? You were saying that you think it'll be a subscription service then, like Tesla's is?
I think most likely. So the way that Tesla works is there's two different ways you can get the autopilot. Essentially, is if you buy the top tier Tesla, it comes with it and you keep it.
Well, thank the Lord for that.
Yeah, but if you buy the lower tiers, it can be a subscription-based service. And what I learned is that they actually give you, I think it's a 1 or 3 month trial, free of the autopilot on Teslas, which I think would be so depressing when they turn it off and you haven't paid yet. But a lot of companies are starting to do these subscription-based services. For BMW, Apple CarPlay is a subscription service, which makes me want to jump out this second story window because
shouldn't be.
That's so stupid. Also, Mazda, for instance, I have a Mazda 3 hatchback of 2019. I have Mazda connected services. I can unlock the car, start the car, turn the flashers on all through my phone. That's actually going to be a paid service. I have a 3-year trial, but it's going to be about, I think it's $100 a year starting in 23 years from now. I recently learned that. That was a fun thing I learned. Because they were like, they gave me this feature, and then they're like, you get it for 3 years, unpaid, and then I was like, oh, great.
That makes sense. I would imagine, obviously, they subscription isn't outright, but still, is there no loyalty in?
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I mean, like, we saw the whole thing, in the gaming world with microtransactions. Everyone went to microtransactions. I think it's just going to be one of those things that we're going to see for a while, and maybe, like we're seeing with microtransactions in EA games, they're going to start pulling that reins back. Hopefully down the road we'll see less subscription services. I think it's just a trend right now. Obviously, auto manufacturers figured out a way where when your car payments stop, they can still get money out of you. And obviously technology has just progressed to that point. So getting back to it, I think Super Cruise will probably be that sort of payment model, whether that be like the top trim. I forget Cadillac's top trim these days, but
like
CT6 or
something like that.
well, the CT6 is the car, but like the
the
Black
actual
Series or like
Isn't it like a
is it the
like
premium?
Blackwing? Is that what it is? Or is that
Black.
Is that
It might be the Blackwing. I'm not sure.
Or is that now the performance? I could have sworn the Blackwing like used to be the top trim for Cadillac, but now Blackwing is almost like their performance. Like V went away, so now is V the top trim versus Blackwing is the performance.
I don't listen to AM radio, so I don't know how Cadillacs work, but it's all crazy. I mean, it's something that, like,
I mean, to GM's credit, I think I watch a lot of, I mean, yours included, but other channels on as well, car reviews. At least from what I've seen, it seems like their Super Cruise is the most, the fact that it's still a prototype technically, and it's not on a lot of cars, like in production, but nonetheless, of any self-driving tech that's out there, it seems like Super Cruise might be one of the best. I'm probably
That's what
wrong,
I've
but
that's
that's
what
the
I've heard
word
as
I'm
well.
getting.
That is
Anyway,
at least the word on the street. But again, it's not in any production vehicles.
yeah.
And I think it's super interesting that they're going to go through the back catalog. I mean, a car that was essentially purchased in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
a 2018 model, could now get these services, which is really, really cool to see. And it's going to be very interesting because when it comes online, if they do like a burst upload, there's going to be just literally thousands of cars that are just going to get this feature literally overnight.
I would doubt. I feel like you'd have to go into the dealership for like an oil change or something. They would update the software or something.
My Mazda Connected Services was just it was just an over-the-air update.
Really? It's
Yeah.
over the air. Okay.
The Tesla does over-the-air updates
That I did
on
know.
their own.
Yeah.
Because their emissions list they can turn on in the garage and stay on. So it'd be interesting to see how Cadillac does it. But
I don't know. We'll have to see.
yeah, we'll definitely. It's very interesting. Like you said, Matt. It's I've heard that it's the best next to Tesla. And
But technically, that's also saying that only the people who have been able to test it, like car
Right.
reviewers.
So far, I
factory
mean,
tests or whatever.
Teslas are great. Autopilot is fantastic on Teslas. So if Cadillac is even close to that, then we're in very good standing.
Well, comparing to Teslas, I think we're talking about like the Mach-E too, right? Like with Teslas, you still have to have your hands on the wheel, or at least in certain intervals to keep it active, and you're paying attention and blah blah blah. With the
Or an
new-
orange.
Or I thought that they put an update to take that away. I don't know. I did see that.
I used to be in a bunch of Tesla Facebook groups because I was trying to find one to review for a while, and
Yeah.
people were putting some wild hacks in there of how they were like
I could've sworn they
trying
put
to make the.
flash on that.
Well, people were sticking mandarin oranges you could shove into the corner of the steering wheel, and it would
Yep.
mimic a hand sitting there.
Yep.
Or people were making bags of rice that were like weighted at either end and draping it over one of the spokes of the steering wheel. Horribly unsafe. I mean, this is like
Not recommended.
yeah.
by
I mean, this is
either
like
of us,
smoking
any
in
of us.
it's like smoking in an oil factory. But it is what it is.
I mean, that said, I think the future is something like quote unquote. I mean, the true future, I think, is frankly the movie was like I, Robot with Will Smith, and like you're literally just sitting back, reading the paper, traveling at like 130 miles an hour. And that's
Matt, that movie ruined my childhood.
Yeah,
I want you to
you've
know.
touched on a very so.
So
I just punched a hole in the wall of the recording studio.
Well, then forget I said that. But I think Ford's Mach-E that they don't need to. I was watching the review from the Stray Pipes the other day, and apparently you don't have to press the wheel to keep it active. It has a screen that looks at your face and your eyes. I think that's the quote unquote future. The Super Cruise does it work like that as well, or does it need the constant input from the driver?
It did say it said on Cadillac's website that it would be like it would have a face monitoring or an eye monitoring technology, but Zach, you mentioned before the podcast your Mazda already has that.
Right. So, actually, face monitoring software or a forward-facing, or actually technically rear-facing sensor for awakeness, attention level, is in 90% of cars now. 90% of new cars.
Really?
Yeah. Literally, the video I was editing today, the Honda Insight, which is a great car you guys should check out because they don't sell any of them, but they're great. Any car that has that attention level, that's usually how they do that. There's a sensor, usually in the infotainment screen, sometimes by the gauges, and it just reads your facial expressions. And my car, personally, my Mazda 3 hatch, when it thinks that I'm not paying attention enough or whatever it is, the center gauge lights up white, and it just says, time to take a break.
Huh.
Yeah, which,
Not something you want to do when traveling 70 miles an hour down the highway.
Right, and it is, you can turn it off in the infotainment. It rarely comes on for me. That one night I went to go see my girlfriend at like 10 o'clock. Actually when I was getting off the highway because I was dead tired. It was a last minute sort of emergency trip. When I was getting off on the off ramp, it was like time for a break, and I was like, I know, I agree.
I'm trying. I'm almost there.
But the most commonly, if you'll see on new cars, there's actually a new symbol on the dashboard. It's a little coffee cup. So this was I first discovered this on the Toyota Land Cruiser, but almost all Toyota products have it. Kias have it. Most Hondas have it. It's a little coffee mug, and it's the attention level. Normally, it's in the screen. It'll come up. It's not like a separate light. Although I have seen it been like a tiny light on the dash, just like a check engine light or something like that.
That's new and different, I guess.
Because I had it come on when I was driving the 2019 Land Cruiser. And it didn't say attention. It didn't say time for a break. It literally just lit up. And I was like, I thought there was an espresso maker in the glove box or something. I was like, all right, like, yeah, sure, I'll take a coffee right now. I mean, it's 2 p.m., kind of odd, but yeah, sure. So, yeah, it's actually in most cars nowadays. And it's just a feature that gets looked over. No one really knows about it, and no one really talks about it.
Oh, well, I don't want to revisit that maybe open wound or touch a nerve here, but maybe I suspect the reason is because we keep hearing that it's not good enough. We keep hearing this accident, that doesn't work, whatever. It's a prototype. I think, someday we'll see like iRobot levels of self-driving, but we're a long way off. I think it'll be at the forefront of buyers' minds until it's a heck of a lot better than it is now, frankly.
I will be 6 feet under when that happens, Matt. I tell you what. That movie took place in Chicago, near home, and it was robots which you can't easily kill, and that freaked me out.
It really did.
Zombies don't affect me. It's the robots because they're smarter and they're strong and they're made of metal, and you can't just punch them.
They have the rules. They can't hurt humans, right? The 3 laws.
Matt, the whole movie was about how they broke the laws. Did you not see the movie? Were you too enamored by Will Smith and his robot arm?
100%. Will Smith. When I see Will Smith, my eyes just glaze over, and I start drooling.
I mean, we're getting into a weird subcategory with Matt. I think we learned something today. But also, didn't they kind of unveil the Audi R8 in that movie? Kind of. They used the Audi R8 concept.
I think the R8 was out, but it was the whole Mission E.
Can we use this to look up stuff?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we already did.
We use this to look up.
What year did? Yeah. Does this computer compute? Can we look up what year iRobot came out?
Computer compute.
Yeah. What is this? One of those TI-84s?
Okay. Oh, apparently
iRobot is apparently a Roomba. So
yeah, that's the name of the company. 2004.
2004. The R8 came out in 2008.
Did it really?
Yeah. I mean,
I have to agree with you, Zach. I think that was kind of like we saw the Tron in we showcasing the Iron Man 3 movie or something for the first. I think the same thing in iRobot for
I think they used the concept car for
same thing in the Iron Man movie. I think
2006. Right. Okay.
Okay. 2006.
But still, 2 years later. I mean, it didn't debut for 2 more years. I mean, at the very least, it had to have been a pre-production R8.
I would say until someone proves all of us wrong.
Look at that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's definitely a concept.
Right now. That's 100%
God,
a
Will
futuristic
Smith is so hot.
R8.
Oh, no. They got the robot next to the car.
Okay,
no.
Yeah, we're gonna
no,
take it down.
We're shutting
Take
it down.
it down.
We gotta move on.
You're going to shock.
Different electric tech, different car maker.
Oh yeah.
What about the Mercedes EQ?
Okay. Moving on to the Mercedes EQ as fast as humanly possible.
I'm gonna go hyperventilate in the corner.
So Mercedes put out that they are working on their EQ lineup. It looks like we're gonna have an EQ A class, an EQ C class, and an EQ G class. Or maybe what is the it's the GL is the normal SUV, not the G wagon.
Man, they just throw letters in there all the time, and it hurts my head. Mercedes is one of these brands that the nomenclature is just too confusing.
Yeah. So we're gonna see. I believe it's the GL class, but they released that they're going to have an EQ A, an EQ C, and an EQ GL. And basically, what they've done is with their development with Formula E, just as Porsche has done with the Taycan, we are going to see, not probably, we are going to see Mercedes using that Formula E technology that they've developed, and they are going to continue developing in racing for the 2022 model year, releasing these electric vehicles. They are full plug-in hybrids. They are performance models. They are not considered AMG, but they are considered the top-level performance models for Mercedes. So,
based on what we talked about with the Taycan, you got me, Zach. We were talking about it before, and it's got it stuck in my head.
It sounds like a Southern person saying the word taken. Taycan.
Yep.
Taycan.
I mean, to be honest, though, we were talking about a couple episodes that crash from the guy. I think it was derived to be it was on like hill assist or whatever and all that.
Oh yeah, it was the hill brake
power
assist
of like the Turbo S model of the Taycan. I don't, based on what we're seeing with the Taycan and how that's basically a race car for the road, I don't think I'm on board with this. Frankly, I don't think we need a bunch of maybe affluent 17-year-olds driving around extremely powerful electronic cars. They're on high school parking lots and college is in general, and I'm not really in a stereotypical sense.
Yeah.
While I agree, I mean, I feel like there's nothing that's going to stop that. I mean, if Mercedes doesn't build these, those affluent parents are just going to buy their kids a P100D, or they're going to buy their kids, something else that's fast. I mean, we saw this in the mid 2000s with Mustangs. Mustangs got really cheap. Every rich kid had one, and then now we have tons of memes because of it. I mean, it's just what's gonna happen. It's just that rich people, for the most part, can't drive. So
we have 2-hour compilations of Mustangs crashing into crowds on YouTube.
Yeah, so get ready in 2035 while we're watching all of the E Mercedes just hit ditches and stuff at 40 miles an hour. Can't wait for those compilations on whatever YouTube is. That
I mean, in terms of the just like F1's obviously in racing in general, like influences production car design and technology with like ABS and disc brakes and blah blah blah. I think a lot of it could be a good thing. I mean, the world does need. I think I agree in hybrids, electric cars, and I've said here too that when I can get the same performance and range and amenities, a typical internal combustion engine out of an EV, I'll buy one. It will get to that point someday. Until then, I won't. With that said, we need them. I think it's inevitable. If they don't build them, somebody else will, and there could be some good from it. I like seeing racing tech applied to the consumer level.
I always think innovation's a good thing because it moves the market forward. I mean, I don't know if you really can build an electric car that's built off of a Formula E car without it being a performance vehicle, though.
Do you get the feeling that Mercedes is just trying too hard to make cool racing versions of consumer cars? Because we have this could turn into Formula E car for the road. They're already trying to build the AMG 1 with like the Formula car for the road. Are they trying too hard?
I don't necessarily think they are, and so I think majority of what is being developed here is they need something that's fun to drive so that more people buy EVs, because if more people buy EVs, then the EU lets them build more insane petrol cars.
Oh, it's just like a Lamborghini with the what is that thing called? The
Or-
Urus?
Well,
build an SUV, get more money to kind of thing.
I think it's more along the lines of Aston Martin building what was it? They loaned the Toyota IQ, and
to get their overall emissions lower,
so that they could build a more insane V12 or V10 or whatever it ended up being.
I could get behind that. Build SUVs, build this and that. I can get behind that.
I don't think the Mercedes powerhouse cars are going away. AMG is definitely not going away. They've got too much money into that. So I don't think these are going to overtake. the question is, are they going to make it more powerful than an AMG? Or do they want to keep AMG alive?
I think AMG will go electric eventually.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Which is a shame. The C63 is one of my favorite cars.
Mm-hmm.
The C63 AMG that I drove.
In
Well, because here's the thing is that I recently learned that they're developing a four-wheel drive hybrid Corvette.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know if that's super public knowledge, but like it is now, you know, because I was told by someone else. But yeah, they're developing a hybrid four-wheel drive Corvette.
I mean, was that the logical next step after taking it out of its heritage with a mid-engine and
I mean,
logical next step, isn't it?
What are your feelings on the C8? Just for a second, what are your feelings, Matt, on the C8? I know you're very big into it.
I would say so. Actually, when we first met, which was a long time ago at this point, yes, less so now, definitely. But I still will always have a love for childhood love for Corvettes. I'm in favor of it, but not. Put it this way, I like it. I hate the rear end of it. I hate it. I just think it looks boxy, and I think they botched the from the rear quarter panel back, essentially from the door backwards. I love the front end. I like the performance. I think it's a great first attempt, but I don't want it to go too far, if that makes sense. I mean, I still like the giant engine, front engine, can't control it. Like the C7 ZR1, right? Too much horsepower, can't put it down. It's supposed to be a car that scares you to death, right? You have experience in that with a review and a Corvette, right?
The C6 Z06 left some skid marks on the road and in my trousers. That was well. It had a big cam in it, bigger injectors, tune, things like that, and absolutely no chassis support beyond that. But
that's the way that I look at them, though. Like in all, like that's not obviously not a good thing. Good things in terms like logically, right? But that's the way I look at it. I think the 8th generation has bettered on that in a good way. But now, like you said, four-wheel drive hybrid, just stop. I think there was a while ago where they were talking about turning, articles coming out like turning the Camaro all electric or the Corvette all electric. I'm like, stop ruining it. Just leave it alone. Just stop.
Well,
that's kind of how I feel.
And the problem is, while Ford received backlash for the Mach-E, I refuse to call it its full name.
Because it's not what they claim it to be. I have one, and it would be a Mustang.
Yeah. Like I said, I refuse to use the full name of the Mach-E. They didn't receive enough. They either didn't receive enough backlash, or they received enough pre-orders that thing is still very much going into production, and it is going to be a very popular car.
Oh. I mean, simply said, people are still going to buy it,
Here's my thing.
Not enough petrol heads to say no,
Here's my view on the Corvette, because this is my same view on the Miata. Mm-hmm. Because, like, the Miata has changed a lot over the years as well. I think if you look at the Corvette as GM's just, like, essentially their Halo car, it's GM's best attempt at a sports car, or muscle car, supercar, whatever you want to call it. I think that in that pursuit of just being the best they can make, I think it's good for them to keep updating the technology. I think it's insane that they're still using a pushrod engine, because why? Apparently, I guess the Z06 is getting a dual overhead cam engine, allegedly. But I think, well, because that's how I feel about the Miata. Because I was thinking about this the other day when I drove the 2020 Miata. And I was like, what if they made the Miata a hybrid? What if they made a Miata electric? And I think as long as it's still, the core of the Miata is just a fun to drive two-seater convertible. Mm-hmm. If they made the Miata a sedan, absolutely not. But like, if it's still a two-seater convertible that's fun to drive, it just happens to be electric because that's how the world's moving, by all means, I would still be a Miata fan. I mean, that's just how I look at it. It's just like, if the Corvette is going to be GM's best attempt at, that's their crown jewel, that's what they're going to go through space and time with, then I think it should keep up with modern times. I mean, we've done the V8 thing for years.
So if we're going to talk all-wheel drive hybrid model
right.
of the Corvette,
right?
is that then going to be essentially, and I hate using this term, but it's the best way I can describe it right now. Is this essentially going to be like the poor man's LaFerrari or the poor man's P1?
Probably. I
I
assume
don't.
that's what they would be going after. I mean, like,
I don't think it'll ever get to that point.
yeah, I don't think it'll ever get that
I don't.
fast.
I don't know.
That,
I'm
that
not
is
talking
such
about that
another,
fast. But
like literally, yeah, that is such another stratosphere. But I think if I look at it, if I think about it the way that you do, Zach, which I will agree that makes 100. I can get behind if I think about it that way, right? And
Mhm.
I'm both for and against that train of thought. Staying in that train of thought, I think the Z, even the top ends of whatever the Corvette can turn into, quote unquote, will always compete with your mid level to slightly higher range McLarens or Ferrari, and that's the goal, right? I don't think it'll ever be a competition, or I don't
Yeah.
even think America will technically. I'm a fan of the European sports cars and Italian sports cars. I don't think America will ever have a true competition for stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
and I think the Corvette should go all wheel drive if to
oh,
compete
100%.
with a Huracan, if to compete with I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know
yeah,
what the lower tier Ferraris are these days.
And
But
I gotta say, I mean, isn't that what they were kind of going with? Like mid-engine. I sworn I remember reading way back
well,
that
yeah, and
a test mule, a competition car was the 458 was the 458 Ferrari. I mean,
right,
one of the all-time just great sports cars.
wasn't it actually rented out
benchmark
by
cars.
Rob Ferretti,
which one
the 488 test car?
might have been.
I think yeah.
But the thing is, something that I learned actually reviewed the 2021 Toyota Sienna, only offered in hybrid now, which I think is an amazingly smart decision.
Mhm.
Um, it's also offered in the all-wheel drive now. And I'm like, an all-wheel drive minivan, that's kind of hard to do. Well, the electric motor was just at the back wheels. So it's a hybrid.
Hmm.
There's an electric motor at the front wheels and the
Mhm.
gas engine, but the rear wheels were only powered by the electric motors. There was no drive shaft connecting the two. So you could keep the low floor of a minivan without a drive shaft. So I
Oh,
assume
okay.
that's how they would be making the Corvette all-wheel drive without running a drive shaft from the rear of the car up to the front. I mean, that's adding weight of differentials. That's adding
Yeah.
weight of
And
drive
electric
shaft,
motors are heavy enough
torque
as they
tube.
are.
Right. So it would
That's
probably
weird.
be more of a hybrid on demand system. Not a whole lot of batteries. Probably can't even drive it in EV mode, or like the Honda Insight, you can drive EV under 20 miles an hour for 20 miles.
So we're talking
I
more
was
of
gonna
like
say the same
a
thing,
KERS setup.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I assume that's what they would be doing. Again, I don't have a whole lot of information. I talked to someone who actually works in Detroit, and that's what they told me. Is that's the direction they're looking at. So the Z06 C8 would be the dual overhead cam, and then I believe it was the ZR1 that was going to be the hybrid all-wheel drive.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, you look like one of the thing. I think one of the reasons standard is, in terms of space and low to the ground and sight lines that they wanted, push rod whatever they had with like the seventh generation ZR1. I mean, they said it themselves. They really can't. They couldn't squeeze and really any more power out that they already did. Granted, what they did squeeze out was, I would maybe argue, more than what they should have in the first place, considering they couldn't even put all the power down, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, like you said, I have always been one, frankly, that like enough with the old fashioned push rides. Let's do away with that, right?
Right.
At least that.
At least
I
let's get
think
into
there
the
will come a point
21st
where
century.
there's no denying, I think, that cars like the P1, the LaFerrari, like hypercars, but unless you're a Bugatti Chiron and you've got just like straight horsepower or whatever, hybrid systems, curve systems are the clearly more perform. You can get more performance out of them. You can get faster speeds and whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's proven, obviously. So I wouldn't be surprised that if they're the flagship, the top end model of the eighth generation, and at least from here on out, would be the hybrid, because as much as petrol heads might hate to admit it, I think hybrids have at least sports cars high end have proven their worth. I think beyond proven their worth. So
Yeah, and I agree, and I think the ZR1 Corvette, it would be a hybrid, but from what I've heard, it will still remain a V8 hybrid.
yeah,
They're not going to throw Ecotech motor from the G6.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get a
Yeah.
2.4 liter
They're not
turbo.
dumb enough to screw it up
Yeah,
too bad. At least they're gonna do it. Chevy, when they've changed, their cars, especially like that one over the years, they're clearly prone to not to keeping the status quo, obviously. So, I think if what you're saying is they're not gonna just throw the kitchen sink at everybody, they're gonna do it at least a little bit smart. They're gonna do it in increments. So,
yeah,
which is all I guess I could hope for,
yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that was quite the tangent off
Yeah.
of Mercedes.
Well,
But
but
We'll
but
see what happens with
interesting
Mercedes. I
info.
don't really, keep tune with them, so I don't know much about it. But yeah, we'll see what kind of technology can translate from the Formula E Grand Prix to, you know, your everyday
Yeah.
GL series.
So I think I know I added it to the list, but Matt, you're kind of the resident sailing
Yeah,
expert here.
and guess just this watercraft like boats. I got you into boats, you got me into aircraft. So there's a new and I don't know how to pronounce the the name German Freers I think is the design, but I don't know who makes it, so I don't misquote. You
I
found
believe it's Nollis. Is that how you pronounce
knowledge.
it?
Most of these manufacturers are, shall we say, American based, right? Rightfully so, right. So
Yeah.
there's a new yacht, a 30-meter, or for those of us in the states, and about a 90-foot yacht, the Swan 8, that 98, sorry, that is sold. Its fourth model, which might not sound like a big deal, but if you look at it online, it frankly is. And the world of sailing yachts is really interesting. You don't, I mean, frankly, see a lot of them. And one of the most expensive yachts, I forget the name in the world, it's owned by some Russian billionaire, of course, has it's like a three-masted sailing. I'm gonna look it up right now, see if I can't find it. But if you look at this yacht up online, it's I think we found what about starting 9 million pounds, right, give or take,
Yep.
which don't know what that conversion would be in US dollars. But let's be honest, when you design a yacht, you can pretty much put whatever you want in there. Frankly, it's got a crew of four. It's got room for a crew of four, which is pretty impressive. And I think it's just awesome. I think it's really cool. It's unique, frankly. It's kind of small. It's your typical normal rich person's yacht, I would say. You're not gonna be spending $150 million on a Sunseeker, 115 meter or so on, or yeah, 115 meters, something like that,
It's
150
not
foot.
a super yacht. It's a sailing yacht.
It would be. I think here's a good example. We talked about the Porsche and Embry. Uh, what's the word?
The Porsche
Collaboration
Embry,
the other
yeah,
day.
the Porsche Embraer
I think
collaboration.
that's about like a $10 million package, right, for the car and the jet. I would kind of put this in the same level of you got to be clearly wealthy to own it, right? But it's a it's a good starter yacht at about, well, frankly, like 9-10 million bucks. So
So here's my question for you, Matt. How long do yachts last? Because we know planes, as long as they're properly maintained and there's not serious issues with the engines, they can last 50, 60, 70 years.
yeah, and I think the nice thing, at least as far as I know, I don't think that yachts, but not also. Would you argue that like aircraft also suffer from latency in design, because anything that goes into an airframe, even like a gold-plated seatbelt buckle, right, has to be approved by the FAA, correct? And once
Yeah,
that gets approved, by the time that's approved and your jet is made, that's already old, right?
yeah,
I think
and
it's
and just along the lines of, you know, I always think of time from order to actual time of delivery. I always thought working in the emergency vehicle market
hmm
with fire trucks that you
yeah.
place an order in 2018 and you might not see it until January of 2020. I thought that was a long time. Then you start looking at airplanes and you go, well, you placed your order in 2007 and you're getting it in 2017.
hmm
In the case of a lot of the 787s and the 777s from Boeing. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, these are long term things. I don't know enough about the sailing world to know how long it takes to produce a yacht and then how long that yacht can stay in service.
I mean, I think with anything, with how long a yacht can stay in service, whether it be a sailing or a motor yacht, it really comes down to like the it sounds dumb, but the cost of it. I mean, one, can you maintain it? Like, if you personally would keep the yacht, I think maybe like every 10 to 20 years, give or take, yachts might be quote unquote replaced. But at the same time, if you've got, like if you're chartering out a yacht like you see on like below deck and shows like that, on Bravo or whatever it is, if they're maintained well, they can last for much longer than that either. I mean, it also depends on the materials used and what the holes and just the like general use. You're sailing on the ocean. Salt water is obviously wreaking havoc on various parts, so it's by no means also cheap to maintain a yacht, much like an aircraft. I mean, you can't just buy it and stick it in the water and you're done. Sailing yachts are also, and because not only do you have sailing yachts generally also have motors on too as a backup plan, or obviously if there's no wind you can't move, you still got to be able to meander around the water, right?
Yeah, it's essentially
So
like an oversized trolling motor, right?
yeah, you could argue that there's, I would say there might even be more to go wrong on a sailing yacht, because you could have all kind like the sails or the jib or whatever like come out of the out of its track on the mast. You've got ropes and all kinds of stuff you got to worry about that you really don't have to on a motor yacht. So I look at sailing yachts as kind of the cooler and more difficult. And frankly, like a really good one is I did watch it because there was a sailing yacht show on Bravo. It's below deck like sailing yacht. I've never seen a show with sailing yachts, and I'll say motor yachts are, but there's nothing like sailing when you get a gust and you're just heading along peaceful. Zach, I know you might not agree, but yes, weight distribution, whatever. When you're so many degrees, basically like diagonally sideways, eating your breakfast in the morning, being brought to you by the cheese steward. I mean, come on. I think that's just the coolest thing in the world when your drink is 20, 30 degrees off the level and you're still just having fun. I think nothing will be cooler than that. I love sailing, just not on yachts, but just like general, even tiny like 10-foot watercraft, and I think it's really cool. I can't afford one in the current day. Frankly, it's a beautiful boat. It's a beautiful ship, and I think it's worth checking out and playing
Matt, that whole idea just repulses me to my core.
with.
So
Sailing is definitely not.
It's
for
terrifying, dude.
Yeah.
Under the ocean is just outer space. We don't know what's down there. We say there like we know, but we don't know what's down there.
this might sound weird, but speaking of like water, I think we haven't gone into watercraft yet much on the podcast. But I love cruising, and you could argue environmental factor, blah blah blah. But at the same time, I will never be I've never been happier, frankly, than when I'm drinking, let's say a beer. Being over 21, legal drinking age in the state. Drinking a beer or a scotch on the top deck of a cruise ship, like in the middle of the ocean. You see nothing but top deck stars above you. I've always loved outer space, and I've loved the ocean. I mean, open ocean. It just fascinates me when I'm swimming in the ocean. I do have that. I don't know what it's called, but it's like the call of the deep kind of thing where I want to just keep swimming. I don't, but I want to keep swimming down just to kind of.
So Matt is Aquaman.
I guess so. I mean, here you say nothing better. Let me ask you something. Have you ever thrown a Miata into a super sketchy corner and not died? It's one of the most awesome feelings in the world. And from what you're describing, in all seriousness, it sounds like you legitimately need to buy a Miata and drive it with the top down for a summer, because you can get 90% of that feeling when you drive with the top down. I have a huge fear of water. I did not know that this was going to be the Zack Fear podcast, because literally my two biggest fears are water and robots. But that's fine. But I love jet skis. Jet skis are like my favorite watercraft at all. Like, ski-doo me up. Like, let's go. But driving a Miata with the top down, you get that nice little breeze in your hair. And it's the same as boating culture too. When you see another Miata, you give a wave because both know that you're in this culture. That's it's great.
Well, Matt, you've got, I don't know if the listeners know, you have a 64 and a half Mustang? What year is your Mustang?
Oh, it's 66.
66 Mustang convertible.
Mustang GT 489 V8.
Yeah.
Convertible. All all original pony interior, original top. It's been it has been restored a couple times. It's been in some accidents in its early life, but yeah, it's cherry red, black interior, black pony interior. Love it.
While I love first gen Mustangs, I've driven two of them and loved both of them equally. You should definitely try driving a convertible that can turn more than 40 degrees, because it is an absolute blast on a back road. I love Mustangs. The first gen Mustang, the first one I reviewed was a 65, red interior, cream white
I
exterior,
remember watching that one.
and that was the first car that before even reviewing, I walked up to, and I was like, this is a good car. Like, I just had that gut feeling of, like, this is an awesome car. And granted, that could have been helped out by the fact of, we took it downtown, and we took it to a 50s styled ice cream shop, so it was, like, very, fitting, and I have a picture of it under the neon lights out there. But the Mustang's a fantastic car. I just think you need a Miata. I think the world needs Miatas. that's my 2 cents there.
I think as a random to maybe bring us back to the tangent here, the sailing yacht that I was thinking of is actually, I believe, it's an 88-meter sailing yacht, about 2017 about $150 million. It's called the Maltese Falcon. Is the yacht? I looked it up online.
Maltese Falcon.
So here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna buy a 1992 Mazda Miata with frame rot and everything, and then you're gonna save that other $149,999,000 and have fun with it.
And go buy a Swan. I'll save about 10 mil of that. Go buy a Swan 8 and then have fun with Swan 98 and have fun with the rest. Right?
Those were definitely words. Yeah. I don't know boats. I know ski-doos. That's it, because my friend restores them. He has a whole warehouse full of ski-doos.
That's pretty cool.
A friend of mine.
Okay.
The guy with the ISF, the 600 horsepower ISF. Yeah. He sold it. He has a Mark IV Supra now that's going to get about 800 horse.
You just reviewed that car
Yeah, not too long ago. But then he also has a warehouse full of ski-doos. Today We Wrench on YouTube, if you're looking for a channel to look at. He's doing a full frame off resto of a Mark IV Supra. It's going to get a 2J. I think he's looking to make some big horsepower out of it, and that'll be reviewed on my channel sometime next year. So
awesome.
Well, that's fantastic.
Speaking of that, maybe we had a little back on land.
Yeah, back on land. Let's talk about the
more comfortable something for Zach here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's talk about the something that we all can agree on. Trucks and their size and how they don't fit in traffic anymore in the States.
They're too dang big. Zach, I want to elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, this has always been a thing. The interesting thing was last summer I drove the brand new Ranger for the first time, the 2019 Ranger. And what was surprising is that it felt like the size of our 1500 pickup truck from the 90s. We used to have we didn't even mention it. Nick and I are brothers.
Yeah,
we totally skipped over that fact.
We did skip over that fact.
Like my commute this morning was about 18 feet from my room to his. I mean,
Yeah.
But anyway, we used to have a late 90s Dodge Ram 1500, 5.9 liter. Almost a big block sport package. And when I drove the Ranger, the 2019 Ranger, which is considered a smaller pickup truck, it felt the same size. Definitely ride height was higher, although we had the sport one, so it was lower by nature. But the cabin size of it felt big. And so what does this leave us with? Well, now the full-size trucks are now so much bigger. Especially, I wish this was a video podcast. I'd show the picture of the F-250 next to my Miata. I mean, it's insane. It's literally the roof of the car didn't even come up to the hood of the F-250, which is actually the reason I sold that Miata.
You can put it in the Discord chat.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to do that while still talking. But that's actually the reason I sold my Miata, was because I was almost run off the road by a semi. The guy just legitimately didn't see me. No one's fault really. But it's just I was so small on the road. And what's interesting is a lot of people commented on my video when I sold it. Like, oh, it's not an issue. Where do you live? Oh, the UK. The UK doesn't get 1,500 pickup trucks. The UK
Right.
doesn't get
Smaller
F-250s.
roads,
They don't get
smaller
F2...
cars, smaller everything. Not American.
Right. They freak out when they see like a regular 1,500 pickup truck. They go like, "Oi, me crumpets" or whatever they do. I don't know what British people say when they see trucks, but like that's a big deal, especially Japan too. I drove one of Japan's largest trucks a couple months ago, and it was the Nissan Hardbody from the 90s. I mean, it was like the little,
Yeah, essentially, for those of you who watched what I consider classic Top Gear, unfortunately, it's considered classic Top Gear now with the True Trio. It was the indestructible truck, right?
Yep.
Similar.
Not that one. No.
That was the one I drove
That was
was
a
a Nissan.
Hilux,
That
so,
was a Toyota Hilux, which is actually no longer sold here. But yeah, so
Truck that would never die.
that's the photo.
Yeah,
I
so
can't
that's...
send it in the Discord because I don't want to scroll and find it, but
Oh, here, do you not have the little setting where
can
you
I?
can hit?
I don't know
send
how to
to-
work technology.
I mean,
I'm actually a grandparent.
Say that like the trucks the way are they right now, but obviously at least in the States here, it's popular to take off the lot, but then you put bigger tires, lift kit, and it gets even bigger. Frankly, I mean, it's just kind of out of control.
Well, there's a whole sub genre of, just truck culture, truck women in the States. I dated one.
It can go as far as you want it to.
So, it's definitely. But the number one thing that I notice with large trucks nowadays, and this is kind of bleeding into our next topic, which we'll touch on a little bit more, is just the ride height on them at this point is so high that I'm constantly blinded by the headlights.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got dark tint. I've got an auto dimming mirror, so it will go even dimmer than the tint on my. It's I don't think it's any secret to the listeners now. I drive a Dodge Durango, but even so, if you catch it in the mirror, the side mirror, it's piercingly bright, and my first reaction was always, well, the guy lifted his truck and didn't realign the headlights like he should have. And then I realized, oh no, that's standard ride height. That Sierra is the GMC Sierra is like the ultimate eye killer at night.
Oh, I was coming back from my aunt's house, my aunt and godmother's couple days ago. Actually over the past weekend. And same thing, Nick. I'm driving the 2003 LS430 Lexus, which no tint, still auto dimming mirror, but it's also lower to the ground, and it was unbearable.
It's
the
piercingly
entire way
bright.
home. I frankly had to sink down in the driver's seat and tilt off to the right, like basically put my head to the right of the steering wheel just to be out of the view of all the reflections in the mirrors.
That's every car in the RX-7. Every single car that pulls up behind you is just blinding you because it's a tiny, tiny car. But it's interesting you said about the headlights being leveled. A lot of modern trucks have headlight levelers built into the system. Toyotas still use an actual toggle switch on the left of the steering wheel, and it's actually like a roller switch. Yeah. And you can lower the headlights so, like, if you're carrying something heavy and the truck's leaning back, you can adjust them and not blind people. Do people use this feature? No. But what's interesting is that feature is also found on the heaviest of duty trucks, the Mazda 6. I don't know why.
Well, no, it was in the Speed 3, too.
Yeah, I can actually adjust them in my car, too, in my Mazda 3. I don't know why Mazda allows you to change the headlight height, but it can. The other thing I want to touch on with the headlights, because I know this segment you wanted to talk more about headlight design, but headlight right, but headlight brightness. My car has auto high beams, so when the car doesn't detect anything in front of you, it's got the high beams on. Problem is that the high beam system in the Mazda 3 is terrible. It would, to the point where it would be like high beam off, high beam off, high beam off. Like it was like
Really?
Like I was gonna have I turned it off in that car. And actually, I've tried turning it back on just to see. I can't. I don't know how to turn it back on. When I got it, I turned it off the first night, and it's never come back on. But it's very, very interesting. And my friend Rebecca bought the same car as me off of my recommendation, and you're welcome. And she the first night she had it, she was driving home, and she was like, "What are my high beams doing?" And I'm like, "Hit the button on the end of the light stalk, the A with the light, and it'll shut it off." So that could be another thing is that people don't know about that feature, and the auto high beams just kind of those systems aren't very good yet.
I've come across a couple of them, and it's just and me driving because my Durango also has auto high beams, but I have to shut them off for other reasons that I won't get into on the podcast. But long story short, my car is tied into some other systems for work reasons, and I can't drive around and have the high beams turn on because that might...
Nick's Durango is actually one of the ducks up in the Wisconsin Dells that drives into the water, so he can't have the high beams on for that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, when it goes into flotation mode,
the high beams will just...
the high beams, so...
Yeah. No, that being... I disabled mine, but I noticed, before I had the systems installed in my car, that mine would work okay, but there were times when I found myself having to turn it off because even my Durango sits up higher than most sedans, and the sedans wouldn't trigger the camera. Or the number one culprit was when it got packed with snow the first day I drove it home. The camera system, or however it was sensing the light, just for whatever reason got blocked, and it constantly thought it was darker than it was, and it was just blasting the high beams.
Yeah.
And, so I had to shut it off. I think my whole thing with the brightness of the truck headlights is just the trucks are so big that the headlights just sit at mirror level now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well, there actually are headlight laws on how high a headlight can be. That becomes an issue when people lift their trucks. There's bumper laws and headlight laws.
Right.
The thing that shocks me on that, Zach, is that there are also laws on how bright they can be. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think like laser headlights on BMW like high trim models aren't allowed legally here in the States, or at least the full versions of them. And if headlights are as bright as they are now, what could they be if those were allowed?
The
Frankly,
sun, Matt. They would be the sun.
It would be, the sun in my rear mirror.
Didn't Audi make a joke about that with the vampire Super Bowl ad, where they turn in and the guy hits the high beams and all the vampires melted or whatever?
Maybe. I thought you were talking about the Audi concept that the headlights are drones and they come off and they light the way in front of you. Yeah. I think it was Audi that did an off.
Wait a second.
Exactly.
Get on the Google.
Okay.
Pull up Google. Jamie, pull that up.
We don't have a Jamie.
I actually heard about it on Rogan. Actually, it was Dave Chappelle that brought it up on Rogan.
What?
And I'm like, I don't think Dave Chappelle has seen a car since like 2004, but he's just living in spaceships. But Audi drone headlights.
Verge.com from 2019 September.
Look at images. It's like an off-road. Yeah. So the headlights are actual. It's like drones that go in front of the car and just light the way for you instead of having traditional headlights.
What?
Yeah. It was an Audi. It's an Audi concept. I was right. Thank you. And
I'm sorry, Audi, but that just doesn't seem like a good idea.
I'm just looking at this
because what if you make
picture.
a U-turn? Then your headlights are kind of gone for a second until
then
they
they're
catch
gonna
up.
become a lifted pickup truck and be shining in your rear view.
I get this for lighting your way when you park the car, and if you walked up to the house.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
If they flew up behind you and kind of lit your way up to the house, but this seems like a really ridiculously dumb concept.
Yeah.
Wow.
The
this is
Audi
nuts.
AI Trail.
Mm-hmm. Which also, Audi doesn't produce any off-road vehicles right now. Why are they going to try to break into this segment?
Yeah.
I mean,
true.
granted, this is a concept, and I'm 99% sure they never
off-brand.
plan on... Yeah, I mean, that's like... I don't know. It's about as off-brand as Volkswagen making bratwurst. So, but then again, we learned that they do make the currywurst. So,
Oh, and apparently the seats also come out and become hammocks.
oh, interesting.
Okay, now that for an off-roader, that's cool. Like
That's
that's
cool,
a cool thing.
but then that's not cool when you don't put it back in right, and then you're in an accident,
Yeah, yeah.
and then they're like, "Why is this guy in a hammock on the side of 355?"
Why
Oh.
is his leg and his arm tied together?
Yeah.
And you're not?
And then the corner goes, "Oh,
Oh no.
oh no." So yeah, I figured talking about headlights, I totally forgot about that. I think that is definitely not the future, and
Oh, I do
Audi
like
just
the
wanted to
taillights.
flex one day, and they're like, "We can make drones too."
So, I think Zach has made a perfect segue into the next topic we wanted to talk about, which is specifically headlights
Mm-hmm.
and automaker headlights. Matt, you had some strong opinions that I want you to share.
Frankly, I think for a long time, automakers, unless you're like a hypercar like a Chiron, have had crap headlight designs and crap taillight designs.
And we're not talking
Good.
about performance. We're talking about specifically
Just
design.
the way they look. Like arguably, that's an important part of the car because frankly, it's one of the most recognizable, biggest pieces I think on the front end of a car as it approaches you, right? Or even the rear end from the taillight perspective. And for a long time, even new refreshes, they've just from every automaker they've been crap until like chief among. Frankly, I know you have a Durango, Nick, but I think for a good example is until the SRT Hellcat Durango has brand new headlights for the 2021 model, right? I think that's because of like automobile specific, but my point still stands. Your headlights look like the same or just look quote unquote normal and uninteresting. Yours do one because you had some stuff done to them, right? But it just looked general and boring. I think automakers are finally starting to get it right. You see
Well, no
things like
offense, the whole Durango needs a refresh
I
desperately.
mean, that's besides the point. But like
Yeah.
chief among which, like I think Audi now is killing it with their headlight.
Yeah, I was gonna
and
bring
designs.
that up. Yeah.
I mean, the new Durango finally
I
getting
I
these right.
I know,
You know?
we're probably gonna get flack for it because we always talk about Porsche. I really do like the PDLS Plus headlights.
Yep.
The X pattern
I would
headlights
agree, of
on
course.
the new Porsches.
Surprise.
But what? So I want to get your Zach's take specifically. What do you think about the thin LEDs? Like the new ones where the headlight is actually itself just the thin LEDs, and it's just more or less a strip light that's ultra bright.
Do you have an example?
I can pull one up real quick, but I'm thinking.
Because honestly,
I gotta be honest. I'm with Zach here. I thought you were else with that, and I'm kind of with Zach. What's an example of that?
because the first thing that comes to mind, I said it in the Kia K5 for 2021. The Optima turned into the K5. It's been called the K5 globally, but they now brought the name to the States. Blah blah blah. They redesigned. It's a fresh redesign on the K5, and the headlights are this sort of squiggle. It's
Yeah, I
almost.
just pulled it up. You think you nailed it?
I really think that headlight design is going to be sort of a next wave design trend, just like how we saw sort of the floating roof design trend. Ew, that one's on base model wheels. Ugh. Just pulled up the ugliest picture of the K5 possible. There we go. So I love this battleship gray color. But see this squiggle here,
Yeah.
I think Kia's been killing it with headlights, especially with the Hyundai Sonata. The Sonata, the headlights go halfway up the hood.
Yeah, well, and then
I
they
love
fade into the chrome accent.
They fade into the chrome, and I just remembered now the Kia Seltos. The Kia Seltos has, again, new for 2021, has LEDs that sort of go side to side. It looks like it's almost a unibrow, but there's like just small space in the middle. So it actually lights up all the way to about, I think, here.
Oh, interesting.
So what I like about this is that obviously at nighttime, headlights are how you identify a vehicle.
Right.
And there's been so many times where I'm driving my loud car and I look in my rearview mirror and I can't tell if it's a Ford Explorer or if it's a GMC Terrain because they have very similar headlights.
That's very true. I've gotten that mixed up. Yeah. And I work with Ford Explorers for a living.
Right. So I think sort of standing out, being bold. I mean, look at that. That's the only part that's not light. I'm pointing out to Nick that little
Yeah. So we're looking at the
hoop
cell
thing.
test, Matt, if you want to look it up. But
I mean, granted, it's just an LED strip. This isn't the actual headlight,
right.
but it runs. I mean, almost the entire front.
Well,
of
it's
the
almost
car.
like the Cybertruck. That's kind of the
Right.
idea that I was thinking when I first brought this topic up. But I like where this topic is going. But that idea of just that cyberpunk-esque.
Right, and actually,
Strip
Kia's doing a
light.
good job at that as well, because the brand new Kia Sorento, which is the bigger SUV, not as impressive headlights, although they did redesign it. Excuse me, the infotainment system on the Prestige Kia Sorento. I mean, well, actually, the Kia Sorento has cool headlights too.
Yeah,
This
it
is
does.
actually
You know
an
what?
LED strip down here. So I take that back. They do have cool headlights. But the infotainment system, very 80s, like pink and blue accents. But it's very modern because obviously it's a touchscreen. So sort of going off that cyberpunk thing. The Kia Sorento, excuse me, is doing pretty well. They also have a feature in there called Sounds of Nature. I don't know if you watched the review yet. I just posted the review of the 21.
I haven't had a chance yet.
There's a whole mode where it's just like essentially ASMR sounds just built. It's a white noise machine built into the car. So you can just sit and listen to nature or a rainy day, which to me sounds like someone urinating, which is uncomfortable. I don't know. There's a busy cafe, which at first I was like, this is kind of dumb. But then I was like, well, now in the pandemic, you can close your eyes and pretend that there's no pandemic anymore. There's a busy, bustling, cafe.
Very
Are
true.
you saying they knew this was all gonna happen?
I mean, I don't want to say it, but I think Kia predicted COVID with their Kia Sorento. I don't want to be too bold in saying that. I think I'm the first person on the internet to draw that connection, but getting back to it, I think auto manufacturers should really start looking into this. I love the lock and unlock lights of my Mazda 3 hatch. I have those sort of the turn signals are like the eyebrows of the headlight, which I think look really cool. And
Zach, you made a. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
I'll say you made a really good comment that made me think of something. Like so often, I think it falls to they do every so often. Like the Durango's in need of one clearly, but they do redesigns, and it just seems like they don't care. They just forget about the taillights and headlights. But they themselves forget that when you're driving at night, that's the first thing you see. Like
Right.
half the time when you might see a car on the road, it's the light. It's just plainly the lights. That has to be unique, identifiable. And when they do a refresh, I think they're finally paying attention. A lot automakers like Audi and Kia, and everyone's starting to pay attention to. Oh yeah, we can't just keep slapping make the same space, dimensions, slap the old headlight in there.
And the cheap excuse out is lighting up the logos now. Like with the Mercedes light up logos.
Mazda actually does it too. Mazda will light up the grill on the top tier Mazda 6s.
Are you guys fans of that at all? Because I said the time since
I think it's personally, and
Mercedes Benz ruined it. When I saw the
it doesn't look good
lit up.
Really does. No, I feverishly dislike the way that the Audi ones. I hate it.
I would agree. Very much dislike.
I dislike them solely because of the fact of forward-facing light laws that we have here in the States, and I'm sure abroad. They can't do anything cool with them, and they can't make them bright enough to be like an actual headlight.
Yeah.
And so they end up just looking like these cheap AutoZone plugins.
That's
right.
That's
right.
exactly
it. Because legally they can't be brighter.
Like I went to AutoZone and bought a light up kit and wired it in myself at home.
And of course they can't make it a color because you can't have, I'm going to make my emblem red and blue. That's going to cause a lot of issues.
Right.
So it's just one of those things that I love getting into like legislature, and I wish I could say that word, but like legislation, and and car design. For instance, back in 2018, when they made backup cameras legally required on all cars, so many auto manufacturers just scrambled to shove a backup camera. Take, for instance, my favorite, the ND Miata. They just put the backup camera in the middle of the rear bumper. Any 2019 or 2018 and on Miata, there's just a black rectangle in the middle of the rear bumper.
And that's the camera.
and that's the rear camera.
Well, look at Jeep. Jeep put it in the rear view or the.
I think that was smart. They
third
put
wheel.
it through the middle of the spare tire.
Yeah.
Toyota, most of them, they just literally just tacked them onto the back.
Really.
But sorry, getting away from it. Matt, you brought up Audi's headlights and taillights, and I think that brings up a new trend. Because have you seen when you walk up to the vehicle? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I think just the whole package, like how they they integrate all the LEDs and the individual dances. I think most of their models now have the like moving turn signals, and the higher trim models, the more expensive ones, at least have like the dances that play when you walk out. Like I think that they're killing. I think that is the quote unquote future for everything.
I think approach lighting. I think approach lighting is definitely going to be the luxury feature of the future. Say that 5 times fast.
Well, I think back in the day, didn't Audi I will say one thing I miss from Audi. I miss back when we were quote unquote kids and the luxury models, quote unquote, the high trim, very expensive models from them had the big circle, big dot, line.
Oh yeah.
Swervy lines for their headlights and taillights.
It was that was that Gen 3 LED, the big the Cree LED.
I miss that's been my favorite just taillight headlight period since I've been alive, quote unquote. LEDs now are really cool.
I don't mind the blends that they do now where it looks like it's all just one light instead of the individual LEDs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean definitely sequential turn signals have always been super cool. To the point where I'm actually talking to my friend about retrofitting some into my RX-7.
Really?
The side flashers, making those sequential,
Oh, nice.
which I think would be really, really cool. But I think approach lighting and I think that's going to be big because that really makes you feel special. When you walk up to a new top of the line Audi, the headlights, they kind of come in from the outside. Have you seen this, Nick? You're looking at me in disbelief. Literally, when you walk up to it, the headlights build themselves. So a little block of light comes in, and then it comes into the middle, and then 2 more come in, and then 2 more come in until the headlight housing is full. It literally plays Tetris with your headlight when you walk up to it.
And so is it proximity based?
It is proximity based off the key.
Okay, I mean that makes sense.
Which is super smart. My Mazda does a very small portion of that where it'll unlock when I get close to it.
Well, and I can set my Durango to where, and I personally liked it initially. It's when I walk up to it, because I've got a proximity key.
Yeah.
When I walk up to it, the racing stripe taillight turns on, the fog lights turn on.
I think it's the same sort of mentality that I have with digital dashboards, of if you have that capability, if you have all LED headlights and taillights, have some fun with it. I mean, I think that's one of the main areas, albeit there's a lot of areas where Tesla succeeds, but Tesla, in my opinion, doesn't take itself too seriously. You can set a whoopee cushion in the car.
Yeah, that's true.
And it uses the pressure sensor for the seat belt of the passenger seat. When someone sits down, it sends off a sound. When you click, I think it was the autopilot stick 3 times or something like that. Mm-hmm. It plays the More Cowbell sound effect from Saturday Night Live.
Christmas mode and all the stuff.
It has Christmas mode. It has celebration mode. It has Netflix. It has a video game.
Tesla's really in a lot of ways, maybe quality issues set aside, they're at the forefront of a lot of stuff that I think I have said for a long time before the podcast, changing trend and creating new trends in the auto industry. I mean, look
100%.
They're already offering volunteering experience for their employees.
Yeah, offering. Yeah. If you need a sign off to go on the 8th grade Washington D.C. trip, you need your volunteer hours. Tesla might need you out in the desert. Just ship yourself out there, work your butt off for a long time, and then you'll get some free service hours. Or if you have a small misdemeanor or something, you can maybe what if Tesla just gets filled with criminals? They're like, hey man, I got this community service I gotta do. Can I build your batteries?
And you're gonna open up the hoodie of your Tesla or eventually take up a battery and Joey was here.
Yeah, it's gonna be you're gonna see a logo and then you're gonna see it cracked by a rival Tesla gang. I'm like, something like that is, yeah, it's not gonna be good. That volunteering, I am just appalled at that.
Yeah,
All joking aside, you got to use points.
Yeah, I mean,
if you got the you said it best. If you got the capability, then do something with it, right? Like LEDs, obviously, and that's why they're in everything, and it's like for a long time. Like they can do, and Nick, and you would know better than anybody. LEDs can do a lot, clearly, and you can make them do a lot of stuff. Have fun with it. Like, I think we're in the age of, no more, shouldn't be any more boring cars. It's, no refreshes, the same thing over and over again. Sorry, Dodge Durango, or even Dodge's website for
Yeah.
as we talked about last podcast, a couple of them. I mean, same time, it might suck for car manufacturers, but the way I look at it, before they could get by with just, like body design, redesigns or engines or whatever. But frankly, whether it costs them more money or not, a refresh requires a refresh on everything. Like you can't overlook even the wheels. You can't overlook one thing because it's gonna be picked apart.
And I'm not just attacking the Durango. Dodge across the board needs to update their stuff. The Challenger currently right now, the platform that it's riding on, you know what that's from, right?
It's the remind me. I know which. As soon as you say it,
it's a late '90s Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they got it from when Chrysler was partnered with Mercedes to give us the Crossfire and the atrocious Pacifica.
Yeah, just gonna say
the atrocious Pacifica that we still have sitting in our driveway.
Yes, that I am a part of the Chrysler Pacifica owners group on Facebook, and it just makes me sad every day. Because people are like, I got my Project Pacifica, and I'm like, dude, you need to drive literally any other car and realize, oh, there's better stuff out there. Yeah, you need just an ounce of perspective. Like literally, go to a go-kart track, and then you'll be like, yeah, this Pacifica's terrible. Ride a bicycle. Like a Schwinn 12-speed will make you sell your Pacifica.
It did get us through our childhood. But
well, I mean, we had to shield our faces when we pulled up anywhere. I think it's really ugly.
It took us to Toronto and back.
It did take us to Toronto and back, and I'll give it that.
It took us to Toronto and back on a broken subframe.
That is true. We drove it there on a broken subframe.
Yeah.
But
isn't there something with the engine mounts or something?
That's what this was.
The engine cradle. Pacificas have a terrible rotting issue. It was actually a recall and a lawsuit.
Solid.
Yeah, the car got nicknamed the engine dropper, but luckily we caught it and we got a new cradle shipped in from North Dakota or Idaho or something.
Seattle, I think.
Seattle?
Yeah, I
thought it was somewhere deserty. No. But yeah, so I mean, all of Dodge's lineup needs a refresh. Pretty much most of Nissan's lineup needs a refresh. I mean,
the new Ram isn't bad.
I
personally, it's big, but
it's a 5th gen. They started that in 19? Yeah, so they refreshed that pretty recently.
Yeah, well, it's the first one without the true Ram crosshair grille.
Yeah, that's true. Here's the thing. I like the Rams. I would never own one out of a warranty.
That's true.
They're very, very comfortable. The back seats of a Ram Limited 1500. I mean, they recline, they're heated and cooled. The back seats we're talking about.
I really like the new TRX Rebel, the 2500 chassis.
Yeah, it's a Hellcat motor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the design of it. I like the look of it. I like the headlights on it. I actually really do like the new taillights.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I would agree with you. I wouldn't own one out of warranty period.
Yeah.
That's one of the nice things about my Durangos. I've got that. I snuck into Dodge's the basically lifetime of the car warranty. It's an 8-year bumper to bumper.
Yeah. So I don't know. That is a super tangent we just got off on from headlights. But do we want to hit this last one? I feel like this last one might get heated.
Yeah.
Well,
why don't we hit the last one?
Let's pose the question to end the podcast here. Ms. Zack started. Maybe I think you and I have similar.
We should pose the question first to the audience, which is, what is a globally or generally beloved car that does absolutely nothing for us? So in that sense, a good way to describe it would be, well, actually, let's just jump into an example because people kind of understand that.
I mean, I'm trying to think of. Yeah, you go, Matt, because I need to
I
think.
say so. I got two. I got like a general category and a specific. My general was hot hatches. I mean, the world over, revered among petrol heads, and they just quote don't do anything for me. I don't get the hype around them. I don't care about them. I don't care what it is or what brand. I just don't care. Like they don't do anything for me. I would don't think I'll ever own one. I don't desire. And specifically in terms of a car, both old gen and new, the Honda, or if you're in the US, the Acura NSX, like it just doesn't do anything for me. Like, I can appreciate the technology and the aura behind it, and I can say, hey, good for you, glad you like them, but I just don't care. Like I don't get it. Doesn't do anything for me, frankly.
I'll have to. I'll fight you on the hot hatches. I will defend the
I'm sure
honor
you
of the
will.
hot hatches. Because here's the thing, they can do it all. Like if you want a fun, sporty car, but you can't, you know, be as luxurious as me and have two broken Mazdas. You can only have one broken Mazda. I mean, like, if you I think they're great for college students, car enthusiasts that, like, their whole world doesn't revolve around cars like us. I mean, we live, eat, breathe, sleep, whatever else, cars. Um, I think it's a great alternative to, like, a car that can kind of do it all. Specifically speaking, the GTI and Golf R, I think, are fantastic cars. I know I joked about them earlier, but I really think that they're good value cars. The Civic Type R, I'd love. I'd love to own a Civic Type R in a heartbeat. Do I have 40 grand sitting around? No, but
If there ever was one, with what, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wings, right?
if I got a Type R, I would actually remove the spoiler on the back, the big obnoxious one. But I will defend hot hatches. I think that they definitely serve a purpose for someone who can only afford one single car. It can kind of do it all.
So let me ask.
All right.
I want to ask Zach this, since we're kind of on the hot hatch topic. What would be your take between, let's say, the Golf and the A3, which are the same platform? So the Golf from Volkswagen, the A3 from Audi.
Huh.
So I drove an A3 this summer, and I've driven multiple Golf. Actually, I drove them in the same week, which was cool.
I remember you bringing the GTI home when you were.
Yeah, that's was a 17 GTI, I think.
Yeah.
I loved that car. Those two cars are not very different. They are the same platform, but they're different in my mind in the fact of Audi was definitely more luxurious, and the Golf was more sport oriented. The Golf, well, not the one that I had that day, but if you get a manual transmission GTI, it comes with a golf ball shift knob. They've been doing this since the 70s.
Sure.
It's just fun. It's sporty. It has the plaid seats, and it has, the sporty shift knob, and it's a little bit more sporty. That's definitely more of like a college kid car. To me, the A3 seems like more of a sort of grown-up bachelor's car because you don't really need all that space. You're not carrying around a family. And it's still fun. And
would you consider the A3 as a hot hatch, or is it just a hatchback?
I would definitely consider the A3 a hot hatch.
Okay.
To me, a hot hatch is something that's sporty, that's a hatchback.
Okay.
At least to me. I know that the definition varies depending on who you ask and what they had for lunch, but I would say that the new turbo Mazda 3 hatchback is a hot hatch.
That I can understand.
I would consider that a hot hatch.
The Speed 3 was a hot hatch.
Speed 3, I would say.
For those of you overseas, that's also the 3 MPS.
Right. The Fiesta ST, Focus ST, hot hatches.
Obviously the RS.
Obviously the RS, a car that I simultaneously really want and really try to avoid at all costs. I don't fit in the I don't fit in the seats.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that.
I don't fit in the seats. It's a blast and a half to drive, but 90% of them have head gasket issues from Ford. 20 to 30,000 miles, they're blowing head gaskets.
Yeah, that's right.
To the point where I believe Ford redesigned the head gasket, and there's actually a recall for it. If I was talking to a Ford friend about it, that's I think what I heard. But funny enough, that 2.3 liter in the Focus RS is really an EcoBoost Mustang, which is really a Mazda Speed 3 engine.
Right.
I mean, Ford has, tweaked it in time, but it started life as a Mazda block. And then, But anyway.
So nothing we've talked about has changed your mind, Matt. You just don't get hot hatches.
No, I think if you were to ask me, I think Zach, you asked me. You're talking to me, Nick, right?
Yeah.
I think Zach, you had a good. One of you actually said something that sparked this thought, before we started recording today, and I can appreciate the significance of hot hatches in the GTI and this and that throughout history, but I just don't. I hate to say I don't care. It's not that I don't care as a petrol head. I care about the significance in the world, right? They just don't do anything for me in terms of would I want to own one? No. Would I enjoy driving one for a day? Yeah, but beyond that, it's not something I would, I think, fondly remember if after I got out. And the same thing with the NSX. I mean, it just looks, performance doesn't seem like an overall fast car. I mean, it just doesn't really do much for me. I can appreciate its significance, but beyond that, it doesn't do anything for me.
Matt, let me ask you something here. Let me ask you a personal question.
Uh-oh.
You like Little Caesars pizza?
To be honest,
I knew it. I
knew it.
Because you
not so
don't
much.
like the simple answer to things. Little Caesars pizza is hot and ready. It's easy, it's affordable, everyone can get it. Hot hatches are easy, they're affordable, and they're great. And you just don't like the easy answer. People that don't like hot hatches also don't like cheap pizza. And it's baloney.
Zach, that might be true. Little Caesars is hot and ready. But if I can find something just a little bit better for a little bit more, and I'm going to have exponentially a better time with it, I'm going to go find that.
I knew it.
He's just
I
shaking his
knew
head.
it. I'm shaking my head. I knew it. I've never met someone that dislikes, or I've never met someone that likes hot hatches. I don't know how to say this. You're a weird person, man.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out in my head how to say that, and it was too hard. I
I
knew
don't
it.
dislike. They just don't do any. They just don't get me going.
You just don't like the simple pleasures in life, and it's fine. It's fine that you don't like simple things that make you happy. I understand.
Okay. Let's defuse this bomb right now.
Gotta take a walk.
And then refuse another one.
I'm gonna angrily drink out of my Yeti.
Yeah.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. So then let's ask Zach, what is your definition for this? A car that is widely revered as good, loved, whatever, that just
beloved
doesn't.
car that does nothing for you.
There's two that really come to mind. First of all, like you said, the NSX. I actually drove a first-gen NSX. It was a 98 T-top, 3.2 liter, not 3 liter V6. So it's like all the goodies. Pop-up headlights. Like this was like the NSX to drive. I loved driving it. It was smooth, but it's just like it wasn't as fast as it had been hyped up to be. And I don't know. It's just like I would want to
like
own
the
one.
McRib, not worth all the.
No, not at all. Like, you know what? Okay, I just thought of another one. Hellcats.
Yeah?
Hellcats. I've
that's
driven
a hot take.
2 Hellcats. I think it's cool that they have all the horsepower. They can't put them down. The Hellcats are absolutely useless on the road.
See, Zach, I'm with you. You can't. Where can you quote unquote stretch the legs? You can't. Like,
Right.
There's nowhere you could actually just like the 01 Corvette. There's nowhere except on a track that, frankly, if you live in the Midwest, it's only available for a half or 3/4 of the year at best, right? You can't even use it. So what, besides
Hellcats are
annoying the crap
incredibly
out of your
comfortable.
neighbors,
I mean,
what's the
like
point?
I said in the video, they're lazy boy recliners bolted to a rocket ship. They're fast, they're loud. I mean, they're fun cars, but I I have no desire of owning one. I have no desire of working on one. I've been in the works with reviewing another Hellcat for a while, and I just have no motivation to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like literally, we've had multiple opportunities to review it, and I was like, it's just, I don't know.
Does nothing for you.
It doesn't do anything for me. They sound cool, but to me, I would much rather have for instance, that Audi S4 that I drove. I'd rather have a 480 wheel Audi S4 than a 700 wheel Hellcat. Which, let's be honest, they're not making 700 wheel from the factory, but I mean, still, I would just rather have a smaller, lighter car with half the horsepower. Because also, Challengers are 4,300 pounds. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, it's a since we've talked about yachts today, it's a land yacht.
It is a land yacht. There's a meme that goes around where, at the beginning of the spring, usually it's like, "Hey, Challenger owners, don't forget to update your boating number."
Yeah.
Running down in the side of your fender. Nick, what's one car that doesn't do it for you that's beloved? Don't you dare say Miata, or I'm moving out.
No. No.
Better not.
I would say there's.
I won't go that far, Zach. I promise you. I would agree about the
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. You've disappointed me enough tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome, buddy.
I would say that there's probably one that has fallen out of love with me, and then one that I've just
never loved.
Well, there's one that I guess that I've never truly loved, and
when it comes to cars, Nick is in a Nicholas Sparks book.
This is true. There's one that I love, there's one that I wish I loved, and there's one that I'm probably supposed to be with, but I will never drive.
But then at the end of the movie, he ends up doing it. But anyway,
no, I'd say the first one would be the Jeep Wrangler.
Okay.
Everybody loves the Jeep. Everybody loves to be able to customize the Jeep. I think they're on the surface they're pretty cool. After having one for a rental and driving it around, even on standard road tires, it was incredibly noisy. It was a soft top, which
I can agree with that. I had the same experience. Yep.
Wranglers are trash on road, but I think they serve a great purpose.
They serve a great purpose off road, but for what I do on a daily basis,
right? You should not daily a Wrangler. Anyone who dailies a Wrangler has no taste at all.
No, they might have coronavirus, but
you can quote me on that. Anyone who dailies a Wrangler does not have taste.
And the thing that I don't understand is, I mean, the older Wrangler, I'm talking specifically the newer ones, the older Wranglers, like the one, we had a friend in high school, Griffin, who had a 2-door.
A copper one, yeah.
Yeah. That one wasn't bad. The 4-doors just...
No.
I just don't, I mean, I don't necessarily enjoy driving them. I feel like the steering wheel's practically dead. It's the most fun, I'll call it, exhibit at the auto show, doing the off-road course in them. But that's where they're home.
That also have those LED strips in the fenders or whatever. That
yeah,
the JLs.
Yeah, the new JLs have that.
The 2018 on. My perception of the Jeep is sort of like there's the super ego, the ego, and the id, right?
Yeah, and I remember you mentioning this in one of your reviews.
It just taps into the super ego of people, which your super ego is like what you strive to be, right? So your super ego is what you strive to be, your ego is what you are, and your id is like your deep down like darkness, And I think Jeeps just appeal to people's super ego. They want to be able to see, an off-road trail and say, I can do that. It's not necessarily that they're going to do that, but they just like being able to tell their friends, or at least think in their head, hey, I can go down that track if I need to. I can take off the top if I need to. I can, crawl up this, crawl up that. I can take I could fold the windshield down, which a lot of people don't know that.
With no
right. Jeep people feed off of potential energy. Of like...
That's a really great way of putting it, actually.
I can do... It's the same with truck culture.
Yeah.
I mean, when I drove
Except for the
that
parking
truck,
lot princesses, which I still don't understand. That's one that I don't understand is
that's
parking
just
lot
all
princess trucks.
the parking lot princesses. They want
What is
to
that?
look
I don't
like
know
they
what that is.
can. It's just trucks that never go off road. They have lift kits, mud tires, but they've never seen dirt.
Gotcha.
But again, that feeds into the potential energy. It looks like they can do that. It looks like they have this ability.
What about the ones on the ridiculous lift kits with itsy bitsy tires?
Those people.
That's just an unfinished lift kit.
Those people are drug users. And
you said it, not me.
And those people should, if they don't have a therapist, they need one. Or just someone to talk
There's
to.
a well-known fact about like how high the truck is or whatever, and how small the something else.
Yeah, there's a math equation somewhere in there, but that's always been my theory. And I thought about this because I dailied that truck we had from 2013 till 2015 when I got the RX-7.
We never. We didn't lift that truck.
No, we didn't lift the truck, but driving a truck.
Yeah, I get that.
I still get this emotional reaction when I see a dirt road. Like when I drove the truck, I'm like, I could definitely go down that.
It was a two-wheel drive sport.
It was a two-wheel drive. We don't have to get into it, but
I think, maybe it's for people who are listening, like you did do that though at times. Not to you didn't just look at the trail. You also did
right
down it.
Right. Yeah. And we had the extended bed, and you would see stuff, and you could be like, that would fit in my bed. That's a weird statement that I haven't said out loud, but you kind of think it, or when you're building a deck or something, you just get this the power almost goes to your head because you can do so much.
I'm more useful than you are.
Right, but you don't necessarily do it. That's why Jeep people have this big egos. They're like, oh yeah, I can drive to whatever national park's peak. There's this one trail, I think, out in Moab, the Edge of the World or whatever, which I saw, again, on the streaming platform TikTok. Some guy made it through the whole trail on a stock suspension, Wrangler.
And I understand that's
though.
That is impressive. But to me, I don't know, maybe I'm turning into the suburban guy, but not Chevy Suburban, but suburban, Chicago guy. I don't see the appeal to something that's not going to be a comfortable daily driver.
Oh yeah, no, that was my end point. They're terrible daily drivers. I'll never own one unless I have 8 other cars.
Nick, is that the one that you've fallen out of love with or never have been in?
I would say that I've never fully been in love with a Wrangler.
What is
fallen out of?
Yeah, who hurt you?
The Nissan GTR.
I knew it.
Yeah, I knew Matt would know that.
I knew it.
Interesting. Okay, go on.
The Zack knows because we're brothers and we grew up together how purely obsessed with the GTR I was from 2000. Yeah, we all were from 2009 to I'll call it 2015. And when they did the updated body, and I started seeing some of the reviews, and people were like, they ruined this car. It squeaks through turns. The suspension feels awful. I kind of started reevaluating what I really liked about the GTR. And I realized that I think it was just the sense of that's an affordable car that would beat...
It's the underdog.
Yeah, it's the underdog. It's an affordable car that can beat Ferraris and Lamborghinis. And would it beat it in a half-mile drag? Probably not. I mean, as we saw... and we've seen time and time again on things like the Grand Tour and straight pipes and things like that. If you have launch control, that's fantastic. But one, where are you ever using launch control? And two,
there was that Grand Tour video of how the Porsche GT3 RS and getting a Starbucks coffee and waiting for a funeral procession to go by. I mean, there's times you can use it.
Here's the thing with the GTR is, first of all, I did drive an 09. I absolutely loved it.
You said the transmission was clanky, though.
At slow speeds.
Okay.
We took it through a Wendy's drive-thru. It was the first thing I did. And I barely got on the gas, and the clutch hadn't engaged yet. and it just slammed into gear. Like, it felt like I didn't know how to drive stick shift, even though GTRs are automatic.
Huh.
But when you got on it, and I got on it, it's lightning fast. It's amazing. The issue with Nissan as a whole is that they developed the GTR, and it broke records. It was this groundbreaking, ground-shaking car in 2009 when it debuted. It was like you said, it was beating
Godzilla.
everything. It was Godzilla. It was taking down these huge
and it brought back
powerhouses.
the days of the R34s and the R33s and R32s, and it was like it was the underdog car.
Right.
And I really, I mean, us in the States, we love an underdog.
Yeah.
I really liked the underdog, and it was something that was like one of those affordable dream cars.
Yeah.
But just lately, it just doesn't.
Well, here's
do
the
it for
thing
me.
that Nissan hasn't done across the board, and what is failing and sinking Nissan is that they haven't updated anything.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
built this absolute Godzilla of a vehicle that destroyed everything at the time. The GTR now is making 20 more horsepower than it did 10 years ago. They haven't kept up with that.
Yeah.
Everyone else, it blew a 10-year lead. The GTR blew a 10-year lead. I mean, everything else is caught up now. The brand new 992 GT3 RS is going to be way faster than the GTR.
Well, exactly.
I mean, the Huracan faster. Everything that it beat in 2009, all the other auto manufacturers are like, oh, we can't lose to a Nissan. They beefed up whatever they were doing.
And they continue to innovate.
And yeah, Nissan once Nissan finds something good, they sit with it for a decade. The Nissan 370Z had a 40th anniversary of the Z Car edition and a 50th anniversary of the Z Car edition. That car lasted from 2008 till this year.
Yeah.
12 years without any changes. Besides, I think they didn't even add Apple CarPlay or anything like that.
Well, and that's the hilarious thing that I know we've talked about in the past is Porsche went back and added Apple CarPlay to their lineup all the way back to 1996.
No, I thought it was the 60s. Didn't they sell a unit that you can put into
if you had certain models.
Okay.
It was universal back to 1996, and then if you had certain models you could add,
wow, it was universal in 96. Interesting.
like their head unit in 1996, you could go in and just get the head unit replacement from Porsche and get Apple CarPlay, get the navigation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, they just had an awesome series out that I will plug, even though Porsche's not a sponsor. I'm just a big fanboy. And I believe it was called like Free to Roam.
Yeah.
That they put out on Instagram TV, IGTV, of a guy who has a 03 996 that he just got the new thing in, and he takes it camping every weekend.
When did the 996 end?
996 ended in, we talked about this. I want to say it was like 2007, 8-ish. There was the 996 and there was the 996.2.
So within the development of the GTR and the life of the GTR from 2009, there's been almost 3 generations of 911.
There's been
the
996.
996.
Yeah, you said 2006, right?
I thought the GTR was 09.
Was it? Okay, so yeah, so there's been...
The 996 I thought was...
There was the 996, the 997, the 991, 991.2, and now the 992.
Yeah, but the 997...
Yeah, if you count the 991.2 as a different gen, yeah.
Did the 997 start in 2004?
Yeah. Yeah. Hang on, Google. Hang on.
Yeah, please.
Whatever it is, that's always been Nissan's issue.
Yes, 2004 we're both right.
I drove a 2010 Nissan Frontier, and I put a picture of a 2020 Nissan Frontier next to it. They look identical. They switched the motors somewhere in the 20 teens, and they gave it an 8-speed trans at some point. But besides that, identically bumper for bumper, they're the same car. That is also could be said about the Nissan Armada.
Yeah, that's true.
That's been the exact same. The Pathfinder is finally getting a change, I think, next year. They just changed the Sentra, and they just changed the Rogue. Murano has been the exact same since the late 2000s, actually. It's just across the board, they haven't changed much, and then you lose people's interest.
I mean, Zach, I think you nailed on the head. I think Nick would know this, and you might. But hey, we're at the auto show. Maybe we I gotta say I hadn't thought about it, but I'm gonna put the GTR one of those cars that same thing never did anything for me, and I think is confirmed by what it is now. It was Godzilla,
Yeah.
but I think classic example that you alluded to, where yeah, you can maybe get yourself to the top, but it's a hell of a lot harder to stay there, and even more
Right.
important to continue evolving when you're there than the fight to even get there is.
And to bring it back to the early conversation of the Corvette going hybrid all-wheel drive, good. Like, let's keep the Corvette evolving so it doesn't become something like the GTR. If they made the same Corvette for 10 years, we would be seeing, I mean, brand doesn't matter. We'd be seeing the same thing we're seeing with the GTR, is that no one cares about it anymore. I mean, realistically,
But once you step on that gas and you push forward, the downside I think is lock yourself into never. You can't let up ever. You know.
I guess, but the public has a very short attention span. And so that's why I
The
think
public
vehicle
does. Petrol heads
refreshes.
don't.
I think 5 years is a good 5 to about 7 years is a good run for a generation of a car.
Well, and come to think, I mean, you think about like Corvettes. That's generally about at least like fifth generation on quote unquote, like more modern times.
Yeah.
That's about. I mean, the run. I mean, I'll be honest. I expected the seventh generation to last a lot longer than it did. I didn't expect the eighth generation to get here, quote unquote, so soon. But to your point, 5 to 7 years. I mean, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. I just think, and that's an issue that I've been seeing across the board. I drove that Infiniti Q50 that I was telling you about in person the other day. I love the Infiniti Q50. Again, also Nissan, but Infiniti, that car came out in 2014. They haven't changed a single design cue of it. They added a new infotainment system with Apple CarPlay for 2020. The 2019s didn't even get CarPlay. I mean, it's just way overdue. If let's go to another brand, the Toyota CHR. Desperately needs a refresh because Toyota refreshed their entire lineup except for the CHR. So if you go back a generation of each car,
I don't
it was
even know
also
they still made a CHR.
they don't sell
Neither
well.
did I.
I get someone commented on one of my videos asking me to review one, so I went out and reviewed one. The dealership I work with only has 3 of them. I mean,
Wow.
they don't move them. I mean, and it was like 28 Camrys and like 30 Corollas. I mean, they move those like water. So no one's really buying the CHR, but again, because it looks like the old RAV4. It looks like the 2012 to 2018 RAV4.
Okay.
And so at the time, the CHR looked good because it just looked like the smaller version of the bigger one. But now it just looks incredibly outdated. The 2021 I drove could easily be mistaken for the 2015, 2016.
Okay.
It's like, why would I take out a bank loan to get something that's not fresh?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
That's the exact same thought I had after watching the Infinity video.
Yeah, it's like, why? Like, that's the thing, is that I could buy
used car versus new car.
I would buy a 2014 Q50 for a fraction of the price, and I would get 99% of the same exact experience as that 2020.
Yeah. Well, I think I want to get before we sign. I think we're going long, but I want to make people think that we're not crazy here. When we at the auto show, the Kia Telluride, did you do the ride along when like that first year that it was out at the auto show?
I did not. I don't think I went to the auto show that year. However, I drove the Telluride, and I agree that it has a slightly hard ride. However, I know people who worked on those Tellurides, and the Tellurides that you guys rode in were, I mean, they were spent soda cans by the time you guys got to them.
They were the ones that were jumping when we went to SEMA, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
So we're not crazy. They were as bad as we.
Kia sends their vehicles whenever they arrive. Like when they arrived in Chicago, they got sent to a local dealership. I happen to know people at that dealership who actually worked on those cars, and they said it was blown. I mean, it was like the struts were blown. It had been bottomed out. The whole bottom was scraped. It was low on oil. Like, I mean, these things had been through it all. So
You'd think that those would be the exact models that you wouldn't send through where the public's riding through engaging, initial interest on a brand new model.
Right. Yeah.
But
So I
will
think
we
you
find
guys
out?
need to like re-ride in them or ride in a nicer one,
Well, I would say
an
I
SX
reference it
or a
like
Prestige
I drove
trim
one
level.
low and high end, or what trim the names were, but actually my dad was looking at for a new SUV. That was one of the options per my recommendation. After watching your review, I thought, give it a second shot.
Hmm.
Went to the dealership and drove it. I would agree, like it's not what it was there, but I will never be able to get that out of my head. That experience at the auto show.
Yeah, and I think the Telluride is definitely an interesting vehicle because it's Kia trying really hard to break into the off-road SUV segment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the same time that they're breaking into the sports sedan segment with the Stinger, at the same time that they're breaking into a couple other segments.
Well, they've got the ultra luxury with the K9.
The K900, yeah, I mean, which
Yeah.
doesn't sell well, but the K900 is one of my favorite cars ever.
I will.
Oh, you opened our eyes at the auto
Yeah,
show.
Yeah,
and that's something I'm hoping that we have some visibility to, and I don't think we will in the time frame. But I really would like to see if we could go to the auto show next year. I just don't know with COVID if it's going to be a thing.
oh, it's already the Chicago one's been postponed
It hasn't been?
officially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
I haven't gotten that news yet, but
They've got some pretty tight restrictions often with COVID here in the Chicagoland area. That doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me.
But yeah, no, the K9 again, something into the super luxury segment, which thankfully, Kia is actually starting to take the K900 feature of the cameras in the dashboard and actually implement that. The new Sorrento
With
has
the
that.
mirrors and all that.
Yeah, when you use your left
cool.
turn signal, your left gauge turns into the camera on your left side. When you turn on your right signal, your right
Honda's
gauge.
had that for a while though.
Yes, they do. Accords and Civics have it. They haven't trickled it into any other products.
Really?
Ridgeline doesn't have it. Odyssey
I
doesn't
remember
have
when
it.
I was first looking for a car, I want to say back in like 2016 or
Oh yeah,
17.
they had it back then.
They had that. Yeah.
That's very annoying to me that Honda hasn't, because I edited the Insight review, and then a Honda CRV hybrid will be out the day before Christmas Eve. Neither of those cars, 2021s, had that feature, which it's just like I feel like they have that
Kinda shocks
technology.
me, frankly.
Yeah.
Why it's not there? I mean, when I first saw it, I thought it was absolutely genius. And like, why is this not at least an upgradable option on everything? Period.
Right.
I mean, just
I think
think
every
that's the next
manufacturer
thing.
should have it. Every manufacturer should have it. Mazda should have it, and it doesn't.
I mean, backup cameras. I mean, your blind spot assist. Like, I mean, it's probably not an obvious thing, but I think that's the next thing. I think it's. I don't have like the car that I drive. I obviously don't have anything like that, but I like whenever I watch like your reviews or any other reviews, I'm frankly, like you said, shocked of the models that don't have it, even from
Yeah.
the same manufacturers. On even like at least they're higher end models that do.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that the Civic starts at, I want to say $21,000 or something like that. And they all have that feature, but I drove the $50,000 Honda Odyssey Elite, and that did not have it. Which is
That's insane.
yeah, it's just a feature. And the nice thing about Honda Civics and Accords is that there's actually a button you can turn it on whenever you want. You don't have to just be turning. But then the advantage of the Kia is the Kia actually puts it in your gauge cluster, while the Honda puts it in the center screen, which is a little bit less natural to look at the center screen.
But you could turn that on whenever you want. I mean, changing
Right.
lanes, and I would almost argue that if I can't have, I want it in the gauge cluster, yeah, but if I can't have it there, if I could still turn it on wherever I want, versus.
I mean, the amount of times I've
only
used my
one.
backup camera in my Durango, just the push button to turn on the backup camera whenever I want.
Yeah.
Again, I think
That's
that
pretty
should be allowed, or not allowed, but used frequently. I was driving the Sorrento. The Sorrento has a front-facing camera as well, down low on the bumper that you can use up to, I think, 5 miles an hour. Which
So
is,
if you're pulling in close on a parking spot,
right, something like that.
Yeah.
And I understand speed lockouts and stuff. You don't want to be doing 95 on the highway and be staring at your backup camera. But I think that it just goes back to my thought with the headlights, thoughts with the digital gauges is if you have the technology there, like just give it to us. Like just let us do it. You know, if you have
Or
cameras
if
on the
not,
side of the
people will
car,
pay for it.
right? Yeah. So
You can. I think even going further back with subscription services, and back to our weekly recharge with the autopilots and whatnot. People, for maybe whether they should or not, and obviously that determines market trends and further demands. People are going to pay for it. So I mean, come on, it's not that hard.
right, you can get people to pay for anything. So
Yeah.
money's gonna be there.
Pretty much. Well, I think with that, that's all I had for this week. Unless you guys have something.
No, I think that's it for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and declare that is the checkered flag on this week. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Please make sure to not only just check out our social medias, but check out Zack's social medias. He is at shooting_cars on Instagram and shooting cars on YouTube. We are at Redline Resorts on all platforms. You can email us at podcast@redlineresorts.com. If you heard the podcast and you've got an idea of something that Zack could review, please email him. What's the email for that?
Pradelreviews@gmail.com. PRADEL reviews@gmail.com.
Yeah. I'm Nick. That's Matt. Thank you very much, Zack. And we will see you next time, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Zach.